The house had never felt so quiet. After James passed away, everything changed. The silence wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of laughter, of footsteps coming down the stairs, of his voice humming along with the radio in the kitchen while he made breakfast. I used to complain that the house was always noisy, always full of life, but now I would give anything to hear that noise again. James and I had been married for 19 years. He was the kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, his words carried weight. He was reliable, gentle, and kind. He loved our son more than anything in the world. Caleb had just turned 16 when James passed away suddenly from a heart attack. One moment, we were making plans for the weekend. The next, I was sitting beside him in the emergency room, begging him to wake up. The weeks after the funeral were a blur of casseroles, condolences, and endless paperwork. But eventually, the world moved on, as it always does, and I was left to pick up the pieces with Caleb. Caleb had always been more like James than me, quiet, observant, careful with his words. He never liked to talk about his feelings, and after his father died, he pulled even further inward. At first, I thought he was just grieving in his own way. He spent hours in the garage, working on the 1967 Mustang that he and James had been restoring together. I didn't have the heart to stop him. That car was their project, their bond. If it gave him some kind of connection to his dad, I wasn't going to take it away. But over time, I noticed something was off. He started missing school. His grades dropped. He barely spoke at dinner. I tried to reach him, gently, without pushing too hard. "Want to talk?" I'd ask, standing in the doorway to the garage. He'd always shake his head. "I'm good, Mom." But I knew he wasn't. One Friday night, I was up late sorting through bills when Caleb came into the kitchen. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying, but he looked determined. He sat down across from me and said, "Mom, I want to drop out of school." I looked up, shocked. "What?" He took a deep breath. "I don't want to finish high school. I want to take the money Dad left us and open a shop. A garage. Fix up cars. It's what Dad and I were going to do." My heart sank. I knew how close he and James had been. I knew how much that dream had meant to both of them. But dropping out of school at 16? It felt like a rash decision, made in the middle of grief. "Caleb," I said carefully, "your dad would want you to finish school. You can still work on cars on the weekends during breaks, but getting your diploma is important." We talked about college. You were even looking at trade schools that had automotive programs. He stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "You don't get it. That was when Dad was here. Everything's different now. I need to do this. For him." He stormed out before I could respond, slamming the door behind him. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the table, wondering where I went wrong. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over our conversation, trying to find the right balance between honoring James' memory and protecting our son's future. The next morning, I went to the garage. Caleb was there, lying under the Mustang with a wrench in hand. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "Just talk." He slid out from under the car and wiped his hands on a rag. "Okay." I sat down on an overturned bucket. "Your dad wanted to open a shop. That was his dream. But he also wanted you to have options. He believed in hard work, but he believed in being prepared, too." Caleb nodded slowly. "I know. But ever since he died, I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. Working on this car makes me feel closer to him. It's the only time I don't feel completely lost." I felt tears sting my eyes. "I know you miss him." "I do, too. Every single day. And I love that you're keeping his dream alive. I just don't want you to give up on yours in the process." We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "What if I compromise? Finish high school, but part-time? And we use some of the money to start the business slowly? Maybe an online page first, take on a few cars at a time." I smiled, relieved. That sounds like something your dad would have come up with. We spent the rest of the morning brainstorming. Caleb already had a name in mind, Miller Motors, named after James' last name. He wanted to create a space that felt like the garage he and James used to work in, personal, hands-on, with a focus on restoring classic cars. We started small. Caleb finished high school online while taking a few evening automotive classes. We cleaned out the garage, bought a few tools, and used some of the insurance money to get started. Caleb set up a basic website, and soon, word of mouth brought in a few local clients. He worked tirelessly, pouring every bit of himself into the business. I helped where I could, handling the paperwork, ordering parts, even bringing out snacks when he was too focused to remember to eat. And slowly, something incredible happened. Caleb began to smile again. He still missed his dad, of course, but working towards something gave him purpose. A year later, on the anniversary of James' death, Caleb invited me into the garage. The Mustang was finally finished. It gleamed under the overhead lights, polished to perfection. He handed me a set of keys. "Take it for a spin, Mom." I laughed, wiping tears from my eyes. "Are you sure? I haven't driven stick in years." "I'll show you," he said, grinning. Just like Dad showed me. We drove around town with the windows down, the wind in our hair, and the radio playing one of James' favorite songs. When we pulled back into the driveway, Caleb turned to me and said, "Thanks for believing in me, even when I didn't have the words to explain why I needed this." I hugged him tightly. "You're going to do great things, Caleb. Your dad would be so proud." By the following spring, Miller Motors had its own shop downtown. Caleb hired 2 of his classmates from trade school and even started offering mentorship programs for local teens who wanted to learn automotive repair. The business grew faster than we expected, but Caleb handled it all with grace, maturity, and a quiet strength that reminded me so much of James. I often found myself watching him from the office window, bent over an engine, or explaining something patiently to a younger kid. And every time, my heart swelled with pride. He'd taken his grief and turned it into something meaningful, something lasting. Sometimes people say that after someone dies, you either fall apart or build something new. I think Caleb did both. He broke, slowly and quietly, in the way most boys his age don't know how to explain. But then he rebuilt, piece by piece, just like he rebuilt that Mustang, until he found his way forward. It wasn't the path I expected for him, but it turned out to be exactly the one he needed.
And as for me,
I learned that sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory isn't by clinging to the past, but by helping those left behind forge a future that person would be proud of. James may be gone, but his legacy lives on in Caleb's hands, in every car restored, every young mechanic mentored, every dream pursued. And it all started with a wrench, a garage, and a son who just wanted to feel close to his dad again. Even now, every time I hear the roar of that Mustang pulling into the driveway, I smile. Because I know James is still with us, just in a different way.